exciting day for us here at Moyne. It's an exciting day in part because today we're going to celebrate the completion and blessing of this building. We're going to do that in a little bit. But here at Moyne, facilities serve primarily to allow us to do the core of our work. And at the core of our work is education. Jesuit education delivered on an intimate scale. Here we take seriously the education of the whole person. We believe that we are given talents, God-given talents, and what we try to do here is maximize those talents by forming the head and the heart. We were very fortunate. In the fall of 2008, we received a magnificent gift. A magnificent gift from Bob and Kay McDevitt. This was a couple. They were extraordinarily wealthy, but they lived simply and modestly. And with the money they accumulated, they wanted to benefit Catholic and Jesuit causes. Moyne was beneficiary in terms of receiving 20% of their estate. That gift, when I announced it on November 19, 2008, we said we received a $50 million gift. Today, that gift is worth $77 million. It's amazing what the power of that gift is. We wanted to use it and will use it wisely and strategically. We've been meeting with the Board of Trustees yesterday, today, and tomorrow to talk about that gift and how we will employ it to continue to deliver on the promise of our mission. And the McDevitt centered that gift around 4 chairs, the first of which is in religious philosophy. And it took us 2 years of searching to find one of the world's preeminent Jesuit scientists. You're going to have the pleasure in a few moments of hearing this great mind grapple with some of the most profound questions. So I welcome you here to our college. Thank you for coming out to help us in the celebration today. And it's now my pleasure to introduce to you our provost, Dr. Linda.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Pastel. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this remarkable event. It has indeed been a very long and remarkable journey that has brought us to our destination today, this magnificent edifice. I stand before you in a building that embodies the very state of science and education in the 21st century, yet reflect that it is the traditions of the 16th century that brought us here today. As we prepare to listen to a highly distinguished scientist, consider that he is, not coincidentally, a Jesuit. And it is that Jesuit tradition that unites us and makes this building and all of the wonderful things that will happen in it both necessary and inevitable. Remember also that the impact of the McDevitt gift, because this bequest has brought Father Coyne to Moyne, on many levels, this gift will allow the college to distinguish us as a national educational leader. We see this impact now not only in Father Coyne's presence today, but in other ways as well. Dr. Stephen Affelt, who will introduce Father Coyne, has agreed to join us as the director of the McDevitt Center for Creativity and Innovation, and he is preparing to launch a wide range of programs and initiatives that will distinguish our campus. The McDevitt gift provided widespread exposure for the college, which proved a boon to our enrollment. Unquestionably, this bequest was a huge factor in recruiting and welcoming for 3 consecutive years the 3 largest first-year classes in our history. This tremendous success in attracting record numbers of applicants translates to our ability to undertake the largest physical transformation of the Moyne campus since our founding in 1946. Clearly, the centerpiece of these efforts is this magnificent facility, which allows faculty to teach and engage in scholarship with our students in a space that is equipped with state-of-the-art technology and design and features that will serve all of our students, not just those majoring in the sciences. I want to thank all those who have made this evening possible. None of our successes would have been possible without the hard work and dedication of so many individuals. And to our faculty, thank you for your patience and your leadership. I am now pleased to introduce one of the newest members of the Moyne community, Dr. Stephen Felt, who joined us this past fall as a professor in the philosophy department and, as I mentioned, the inaugural director of our McDevitt Center for Creativity and Innovation. Dr. Felt received his undergraduate training in philosophy at the University of California at Berkeley and received his PhD in philosophy from Harvard, where he worked closely with the eminent American philosopher Stanley Cavell. Upon completing his PhD, Dr. Felt was named a junior fellow in the Society of Fellows at the University of Chicago and has held faculty appointments in philosophy at Johns Hopkins, the New School for Social Research, and most recently in Notre Dame's program of liberal studies. Dr. Felt is an accomplished and an award-winning teacher whose scholarly work reflects his broad interdisciplinary training and his commitment to the real-world importance of philosophy and the liberal arts. His energy and passion for philosophy inspire his students, and his breadth of experience in interdisciplinary teaching and research demonstrates the vision and creativity we need to help us shape and launch the McDevitt Center for Creativity and Innovation. Please welcome Dr. Stephen Felt.
Thank you, Dr. Lenora. Am I audible? It's my great pleasure to introduce Father George Coyne, the inaugural McDevitt Chair of Religious Philosophy at Moyne College. As a committed man of faith and Jesuit priest who's also a renowned scientist and astronomer, Father Coyne's life and work vividly demonstrate a dynamic and productive unity among faith and reason. Father Coyne joined the Jesuits at the age of 18, and his subsequent education and career reflect his commitment to combining a devotion to serving God and rigorous scientific inquiry. In 1958, he received his bachelor's degree in mathematics and his licentiate in philosophy at Fordham University. 4 years later, he earned his PhD in astronomy from Georgetown, and a mere 3 years after that, completed the licentiate in sacred theology at Woodstock College and was ordained a Roman Catholic priest. Over the course of his career, Father Coyne has held research appointments at Harvard, the University of Scranton, and the University of Arizona, and has been awarded 9 honorary degrees from colleges and universities across the United States and Europe. He served for nearly 30 years as director of the Vatican Observatory and founded the Vatican Observatory Summer School and the Vatican Observatory Research Group. Father Coyne's astronomical specialty involves using the polarization of light to study, among other things, the distribution of matter around young and newly emerging stars, studies that ultimately help to illuminate the scientific processes through which planetary systems such as our own are born. While publishing scores of influential articles within his scientific specialty, Father Coyne has also combined his expertise in science with his training in philosophy and theology to become a leading figure in promoting thoughtful and searching dialogue between science and religion. While serving as director of the Vatican Observatory, Father Coyne initiated a series of groundbreaking conferences exploring scientific perspectives on divine action, and he's played a deeply important and constructive role in ongoing debates surrounding the religious implications of scientific evolution. At a time when discussions of science and religion too often devolve into dogmatic and polarized polemics, Father Coyne has worked to foster respectful engagement among thinkers with widely differing viewpoints. Indeed, many of Father Coyne's own discussions of science and religion work at one and the same time to ease the fears of believers who worry that science diminishes God, and to challenge the certainties of non-believers who find no place for God. One hallmark of Father Coyne's thought is his belief that in itself, scientific data is neutral and can neither prove nor refute any claims about God. Accordingly, for him, those who see no signs of God in the universe need not be castigated as blind or as scientifically misguided. Rather, seeing God in the universe, he suggests, is less a matter of the data you consider than of the eyes with which you look. As you're about to discover, Father Coyne has an unsurpassed ability to present the fruits of his highly technical and specialized scientific work with truly amazing lucidity, beauty, and power. To a remarkable extent, he allows us to look through his eyes and offers us a compelling invitation to see the God that he sees. Father Coyne's talk this afternoon is titled, "The Universe is Our Home. We are co-creators in the Jesuit tradition." Please join me in welcoming Father Coyne.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you for the applause. We'll see whether you applaud at the end of the excellent test. I thank Dr. Costello and Dr. Lamora, who have been responsible for my standing here. I sometimes hardly recognize myself, especially after these introductions, but I'm used to that. If you don't mind a little biographical statement, I'm one of 9 children, and of that 6 of us had to get out to school at about the same time. So I'd be coming down the steps, a second grader or so, and my mom would say, "Richard," no mom. "James," no mom. "Robert," no mom. My mom had some German blood. "Who the hell are you?" "I'm George, Mom." "Oh, I love you, George." Well, let's get on and more serious. I would like to begin by telling you 2 stories, other than this crazy story I just told. And those 2 stories, I hope, will echo a bit through the thoughts I have to share with you, and hopefully take on meaning as I go along. The 2 stories are very simple ones. The first one concerns the construction of the first national observatory in the Tucson, Arizona area. This is about the early 1960s, and the mountain selected by the National Science Foundation is this mountain, Kitt Peak, which lies about 50 miles from Tucson. The mountain happens to be right in the middle of an Indian reservation, and the indigenous people, the Tohono O'odham tribe, did not have much, as many of those people, of a written language. They also lived under the stars, but they did not study the stars, so they didn't have a word that meant astronomer, one who studies the stars. Well, in this case, not always, mind you, the federal government didn't just build, they entered into treaty agreements with the Native Americans, and they wanted to have a written treaty. So the Tohono O'odham had to invent a word for astronomer, and they did. They invented a word which, translated into English, says the people with long eyes. And I've often used that because I think a primitive expression, in the sense it went back and gathered up the real meaning of an astronomer. That is that all of these big telescopes, all of this metal and glass, was not out there. It was an extension of our eyes, or if you will, our curiosity to understand the universe. So all of this was part of us. The second story resonates a little bit with what I want to share with you too, and that was when the Vatican Observatory decided to build a telescope near the National Observatory, but on a better site, actually. And in order to build this telescope, we had to raise funds. though the Vatican Observatory is the Pope's observatory and supported by the Pope with an annual budget, to build this telescope for various reasons we had to raise funds. And so we discovered, through other Jesuits, a very wealthy gentleman, Fred A. Lennon, now deceased, who lived in Cleveland, Ohio. And Fred was a very devoted Catholic, and he ran what he called a plumbing outfit. However, his plumbing outfit made the high-pressure valves for the backpacks of the astronauts and such very sophisticated plumbing. So we thought he might be interested. And he showed some interest on my first visit, and he gave what our fundraisers considered a small gift. And they said, he can give much more, go back and ask him for a bigger gift. You're familiar with this. So this little kid from Baltimore who never saw two quarters in the same place went to Mr. Lennon and said, Mr. Lennon, we'd like you to give a major gift. And he looked at me and said, what do you mean by a major gift? And I did $1 million. I finally was able to say it. And he said, Father Coyne, Alice and I, we're building an orphanage down in Peru. We're building a home for unwed mothers in the Sudan. We're trying to help a parish rebuild its church down in South Africa. A telescope. So I didn't know what to say to him. He said, well, why don't you go away for a couple of weeks? But I want you to come back. I'm not putting you off. And think about it. So I did. I prayed about it. And I went back, and in my Jesuit piety, I said to him, Mr. Lennon, only thing I can say to you, if all we do is feed the hungry, put roofs over the homeless, clothe the naked, if that's all we do, all of us are going to be naked and hungry and homeless. All of us. Because we have to contribute to what really makes us human. The arts, the sciences, music, sculpture. And he said, goodness, now I have to think about it. So he said, give me a couple weeks. Well, from that time on, beginning of each month, we received a check until he had given $4.5 million to build the telescope. So there it is. Well, those two stories I hope will resonate a little bit as I talk along here. As we dedicate this building today, an extraordinary leap forward, as you know, in the life of this college, I would venture to say that we are not just dedicating an amazing achievement in construction and engineering, the coming together of glass, concrete, steel, copper, sophisticated electronics, like the telescopes that have been built around the world. So here are the telescopes on the Big Island. These telescopes are some of the largest in the world. There's a big radio telescope in Peru, radio telescopes in New Mexico, and this building. What I'm trying to say is, just like those telescopes, we are celebrating a giant leap forward in our common search through many diverse intellectual disciplines to understand the universe and our place in it. We are rededicating ourselves through our intellectual pursuits to the betterment of ourselves and all of those we touch. Through those attributes which I have learned, Moyne so proudly proclaims: spirit, inquiry, leadership, and judgment. In that spirit, I would like to share with you our knowledge of the universe, which science has, through our long eyes, come to achieve. This will serve as a departure point for our reflections upon our place in the universe as a Jesuit college. When it comes to specifics about a dialogue between science and religion, it is arguably difficult to find a more heated topic of discussion than the one concerning the origins and evolution of the universe, and especially of life and intelligence in the universe. Can such origins be understood without evoking a creator God? Responses range from the extremes of Stephen Hawking or of Pope Pius XII to almost all conceivable positions in between. Hawking claims that if his quantum cosmological theory of the universe with no boundary conditions is correct, then we have no need of God. Science excludes God. Pius XII attempted to claim that with Big Bang cosmologies, scientists were coming to discover what had already been known from the book of Genesis, namely that the universe had a beginning in God's creative action. Religious belief appropriated science. Must we choose between these two positions? Before attempting to approach this dilemma, I would like to present with a series of slides our best scientific view of the history of the universe and our place in it. This telescope allowed us, the Hubble Space Telescope, to look back from the time of the Big Bang all the way back to the beginning almost of the universe. We lived 13.7 billion years since the Big Bang, so we're out here in this expanding universe. As we look back with Hubble Space Telescope and other large telescopes that I have shown you, we look back to about a little less than 1 billion years since the Big Bang with the largest telescopes. And what do we see? This is what we see. So what am I so excited about? They're all just little dots of light. Except for 4 or 5, there's one, there's another. There are about 5 stars on this slide. All the rest are galaxies, each of which contains of the order of 100 billion stars. If you don't believe me, let's look at a few. Here's an irregular galaxy, which is about half a little less even the mass of our own galaxy. Here is an elliptical galaxy, which is sometimes 10 times the mass of our galaxy. By the way, it's eating up a little baby galaxy. That's coincidental. We call this galactic cannibalism. And then here is an elliptical galaxy, a spiral galaxy like our own galaxy. So if I looked at all of these, they would show me that these are all galaxies. Now you have to appreciate that this one photograph was taken by Hubble in 40 orbits on a piece of the sky that's the thickness of about 1/20th of my index finger, so that it could look deep into space. So if we do statistics on this, we can estimate that if there are that number of galaxies on this little piece of the sky, how many are there in the universe? About 100 billion galaxies, each of which contains 100 billion stars. So there are about 10 to the 22nd stars in the universe. That's 1 with 22 zeros behind it. This is a galaxy like our own. This is the Andromeda Galaxy, our sister galaxy. It measures across 100,000 light years, and it contains 100 billion stars. 100,000 light years. Now let's pause a moment, because I jam this down the throats of my students. A light year is a measure of distance. It sounds like light year. It's a measure of distance that light travels in a year. So should I be standing here and my mother-in-law, I don't have one, so I can think that. Be standing up there, I say, Mom, how are you feeling? 200,000 years later, if sound traveled at the speed of light, which it does not, but let's assume it did, 200,000 years later, I'd hear her say, oh, son, I'm not feeling so well, my knees are hurting, I can't play tennis anymore. Do you get the point? Light travels at a finite speed, okay? But it takes time, light, go from one place to another. So we see the sun, when it's set, 8 minutes after it's set. The moon, we see as it was a second ago. The galaxies I've shown you, most of them as they were 12 billion years ago. So as we look out at the universe, we're looking back in time. Our galaxy, as I said, is very similar to that one. This is a diagram of it. It has a bulge. It's a very flattened system, 100 times longer than it is thick, 100,000 times longer than it is thick, and the sun is about 2/3 of the way out to the edge. If we take a little picture of a piece of what I just showed you, the tabletop of our galaxy, this is what we see. There are so many stars here that it looks like a cloud, but we just can't resolve all the stars. What I'm interested in are these little dark areas here. And the reason is because stars are being born in those dark areas. And that's very important to the little talk I'm sharing with you. This is the birth of stars here. A little piece of one of those clouds began to break up. Little pieces broke off. Through law of gravity, they begin to collapse. As a cloud collapses, it heats up. In this case, it raises the interior to millions of degrees, turns on a thermonuclear furnace, and you have a star. Thermonuclear furnace. What's happening is hydrogen is being converted into helium and generating energy. And the sun is doing that and has been doing that for 5 billion years. But there will come a time when the hydrogen will be so depleted that the sun will have to collapse again, raise the temperature even higher to begin the next thermonuclear process, which requires a higher temperature, converting helium to carbon, and then carbon to nitrogen. But finally, a star collapses. It can't raise the temperature high enough, so it dies. It no longer can generate thermonuclear energy. And here is a dying star. A neutron star in the middle here has blown up, exploded at the end, okay? And this material is going to spread out into the universe. It's a supernova remnant. Why am I emphasizing the birth and death of stars? Because if this were not happening, you and I would not be here. It's a scientific fact. It took 3 generations of stars through thermonuclear buildup of heavier and heavier elements before we had the chemistry for life. The sun is a 3rd generation star. We are born of stardust. I have a professor friend who says we're born of thermonuclear waste. It's the same reality, but I prefer to call it stardust. So around one star this came to be, and in this planetary system, this came to be this little grain of sand. It's fair to say, isn't it? I mean, it's one of 8 planets around one star, 100 billion stars in our galaxy, of 100 billion galaxies, so it's a grain of sand. But it's somewhat important to us because this happened on this grain of sand. We, through the buildup of life, have developed the capacity to put the universe in our heads. That's what I'm sharing with you in these brief moments tonight. What we know about the universe by reflecting upon it. The universe is no longer in blind evolution. In us, whether it's happening in others, I can't say. In us, the universe is thinking about itself. How did we come to be? Now, I apologize to the people from biology and chemistry and other aligned fields here, but I can only say so much in so much time. We came to be through a process of neo-Darwinian evolution, the buildup of ever more complex species. How did this come to be? Through the buildup of ever more complex chemistry. The universe has 10 to the 22nd stars being born and dying, pouring out all this chemistry. It has 14 billion years of doing this. Chemistry, by the very nature of chemistry of the universe, builds up ever more complex molecules. So look at this. I don't even know what these complex molecules. I don't know enough chemistry. But what I do know, and you will know if you look carefully, is that H, C, N, and O appear time and time and time again in ever more complex molecules until we get sugars, the amino acids, protein, DNA, the liver, and the human brain. Now, I've jumped over a lot of even controversial, but the best science says that we came through this buildup of ever more complex organisms in a very fertile universe. What do I mean by fertile universe? Let me go ahead a moment. It's old, as I said, and it has all these stars. Those 2 ingredients together of building up ever more complex chemistry makes the universe very fertile. In this fertile universe, the process I've described came to be. Now, the question is, did this happen by chance or necessity? ask classical questions. And modern science tells us it happened by both chance and necessity in a fertile universe. What do I mean by chance? Necessity is obvious. The laws of nature, chemistry, gravity, conservation of angular momentum. The universe has laws. It has necessary processes. By chance, I mean chance. Two hydrogen atoms in that very early universe meet. They have to make a hydrogen molecule. But they don't at that time and place because the temperature and pressure conditions are not correct. So they wander through this universe. They meet trillions of times. There are trillions of atoms meeting over a long period of time. Well, you can do statistics and say 60% of the time around this star, 80% of the time in that galaxy, they're going to make a hydrogen molecule. Because they have to if they meet where the temperature and pressure are correct. Then two hydrogen molecules meet an oxygen. They have to make water, but they don't at this time and place. So go through a 14 billion year old universe with these processes, and by chance and by necessity, you and I came to be. Now, I haven't mentioned God, and for the time being, I'm not, because in science, I can't say whether God did this or didn't do it. All I know is that's the way you and I came to be scientifically. Okay? That it was not all predetermined as the way science sees it. There was a chance that processes would not succeed. So if we're way back then, we could not predict that you and I would come to be because chance processes were involved. So, folks, there we are. In a planetary system, in a galaxy, in a local cluster of galaxies, in a supercluster of galaxies, in a universe that's expanding. That's where this little grain of sand is. So there we are, looking out at the universe. Now what I'd like to do, that's the best I can do of trying to present you the science. I'd like to reflect on what that means to me, and I hope to you as religious leaders. Let's summarize, first of all. It is clear from all of the sciences, including geology, molecular biology, paleontology, comparative anatomy, cosmology, that evolution is an intrinsic and proper characteristic of the universe. Neither the universe as a whole nor any of its ingredients can be understood except in terms of evolution. We human beings came to be through evolution, and evolution is a daily happening. We, for instance, are constantly exchanging atoms with the total reservoir of atoms in the universe. Each year, 98% of the atoms in our bodies are renewed. Each time we breathe, we take in billions and billions of atoms recycled by the rest of breathing organisms during the past few weeks. Nothing in my genes was present a year ago. It is all new, regenerated from the available energy and matter in the universe. My skin, thank goodness, is renewed each month, and my liver each 6 weeks. In brief, human beings are among the most recycled beings in the universe. The evolutionary universe is dynamic. It is not all predetermined. Thus far, science, even though no scientist would claim to have the ultimate truth about anything I say, ultimate truth. But what relevance does all this scientific knowledge have to do with what we celebrate today? Allow me now, if you will, to reflect upon the implications of our scientific knowledge for our belief in God, who is the creator and source of all that is. Though God transcends the universe, he is working in it through his providence and continuous creation. I apologize for the non-inclusive language, but it becomes very difficult to say her, his, as many times as I would have to say it. I apologize to all my lady friends. I will use his. This reveals a God who made a universe that has within it a dynamism as seen by science, and thus participates in the very creativity of God. In such wise, God emptied himself so that he could share his infinite love with his creation. We are co-creators with our Creator God. Our vocation through our baptism is a participation in the intrinsically missionary nature of the church, the concrete presence of the Creator among his co-creators. God is continually encountering the world in new and creative ways because the world God created is responsive to a continuing encounter with its Creator. The wisdom of God in emptying himself to create a world which shares in his creativity requires that since God is the one God of all creation, such participation in his creativity must be universal. It cannot favor any particular social, cultural, or religious movement. While to function, any given vocation, such as ours here at Moyne, must be limited, it cannot be exclusive. We are only at home in the universe when no person and no object is excluded from our creative love. To my mind, this view of the evolutionary universe and our place in it, derived at least partially from the sciences and of God's role in the universe, derived from the reflections of a religious believer upon that same science, may help us in a further understanding of Ignatian mission and of what we celebrate today. We, in a special way, as self-reflecting beings, share in the creativity which God desired the universe to have. I have not spoken about the spiritual nature of the human being because that cannot be an object of scientific research. But the reflections of a religious believer upon the nature of God and his relationship to the universe brings us undoubtedly to a recognition of our spirituality. In fact, such reflections are themselves an exercise of that spirituality. Reflections upon our scientific knowledge of the universe bring us to a recognition of our role as co-creators, so to speak, in God's continuous creation of the universe. Ignatian mission is therefore not a choice taken independently of the world around us. It derives from the very nature of the universe. It cannot be separated from faith, our relationship of love to God, the source of all missions, all creativity in the universe. Furthermore, it appears to me that the Jesuit identity expressed by St. Ignatius's vision of Jesuits and their colleagues as contemplatives in action is reinforced by our reflections on the nature of the universe. Co-creators on mission in the universe can only realize their mission if they are constantly united to God, the source of all missions. Jesuit identity is much more than what Jesuits and their colleagues do. It is bound intimately to the very nature of the universe, which drives us as co-creators to carry out our mission in union with the Creator. And that is what I suggest we are doing today. Just like all those telescopes that astronomers use, this building is not just glass and steel and very sophisticated structure. It is our participation in a universe that still needs to be created. Today we take a great leap forward with this celebration of our common mission to participate with God in the continuous creation of the universe, which is our home. Thank you for listening. This is only water, by the way. I'll catch up later. Sure. Question, discuss. Someone want to monitor it? Or shall I just, please?
Talk a little bit about dark matter and that supposedly like 70% of the universe.
Okay, our scientific knowledge tells us that about the order of 97% of the universe is either in dark matter or dark energy. They're two different things. Where does the 97% come from? What is dark matter? It's real matter because it exercises a gravity pull. For instance, our galaxy is rotating faster than it should be by applying the law of gravity to all the matter that's in the galaxy. So we know that there has to be matter on the halo of the galaxy that is not radiating. We can't see it, but we can measure it by its effect on the rotation of the galaxy. Okay? There are clusters of galaxies that I showed very vaguely there. You know, our local supercluster of galaxies is held together. It's a cluster, like the planetary system is held together. We measure all the mass that radiates in that cluster, and it's not enough to hold it together. So there has to be other matter there that is exercising gravity to hold it together, and that's what we call dark matter. So when we measure all of this, we come with dark matter is about, something like 80% or so. Okay? And we don't know what it is. We call it dark because our heads are dark. We don't know. We know it's there. Oh, there's some ideas, but we don't know what it is. Dark energy is just within the past little more than a decade, I suppose I can say. We've measured that very distant galaxies are moving faster away than they should be according to everything we know about the expanding universe. The expanding universe is a marvel in that up until most recently, the universe was just on the edge of collapsing eventually or expanding forever. And it could expand forever, but always slow down. That's what is called a hyperbolic process. Okay? But now we've measured distant supernovae, actually, that show that the universe is accelerating in its expansion. That can't be. There's matter in the universe. You and I and galaxies are here. And by gravity, matter pulls in. So the universe should always be slowing down according to what we know of gravity. But it's not, it's accelerating. So there has to be an energy source in the universe that's working against gravity. Gravity is pulling in, okay? And this dark energy is pushing out. What is this dark energy? We don't know. But when you add that on to, this is a long response to a simple question. When you add that on to dark matter, can you imagine how more ignorant can you be? And 97% of what you're studying, you don't see. And you don't know what it is. So everything I've shared with you is our knowledge of 3% of the matter energy in the universe. But please.
First, thank you very much for being here, not just tonight, but...
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks.
I've been fascinated by some of the conversations you've had with representatives of the New Atheist movement, Richard Dawkins, Bill Maher, and listening to those arguments, it reinforces the assumption that science cannot claim or confirm God nor refute the existence of God. And I'm wondering, where is the common ground, or is there one, between theologians and scientists of an atheistic movement, if science isn't going to be able to bring the two together in relation to either? Do you see common ground?
The only common ground I see, Joe, is to truly be a human being. Now, I mean, it's easy to criticize. It's much more difficult to really be a human being, in the fullest sense of the word. But when I talk to Richard Dawkins or Maher, I have said, Richard, why did you marry the lady you married? Because she has, nice curly hair. paints her toenails red, this. Said you put together all the data, if it's true human love, of whatever sort, married love, or parents or children, if it's true human love, you can't explain it. You can't put data together and say why. Now, if that's true of true human experiences, my Lord, what should it be of the wider, of opening yourself to wider experiences? I mean, I'm talking around it. I tell those folks, I am not a walking brain. I mean, there's some people I like. There's some people I don't like. There's some music I like. There's some I don't like. I mean, human experience is vast. Why shut off any part of it? And that's what the scientism, I'm not saying any one of these individuals, I call it scientism, as if science is the only way to true and certain knowledge. First of all, I'm not here just to know. Knowledge is very important. That's why, Moyne College's principal vocation is that, to, develop it. But knowledge is not everything. If it were, I wouldn't be here, because if my mom and dad just lived on knowing one another, I wouldn't be here. I mean, my answer to your question is to deal as human beings, to widen your horizons. It's easy to be accusatory, but I hate to make a point. Stephen Hawking, I know, has never read Augustine. He's never read Thomas Aquinas. I'm not sure he's read Shakespeare. From all that I hear. And that's, you cannot dialogue with, a scientific brain. There's nothing to grab onto. That's the only way I approach it. And it's not, for instance, Carl Sagan, who's eminent, deceased now, but you must know him from his great TV shows from Cornell. Eminent scientist, no doubt about it, and a great popularizer, but determined, a very determined atheist. And we were close friends. We had some good conversations. And one time, I just had to tell him, because we were dialoguing back and forth. I said, Carl, what faith is, it's not a lot of knowledge. It's not, it builds on knowledge and all. But faith is a relationship of love with God. And more importantly, it's God's gift of his love to me. I'm very Augustinian. Augustine said, I hunted, when he was in his conversion, I hunted God down the highways, down the byways, night and day, and I only found you, God, when I realized that you found me. And so I told Carl that, this love is a gift of God to me. And he justly said, well, George, how come you have the gift and I don't? Well, try that one out. It's a just response. Well, I babbled. Whenever we talk about this, we babble. I said, Carl, I'm convinced that you either have the gift and don't know it. We all walk our own walk. It came to me fairly easily growing up in a Catholic family, and then I revolted and all. But we all have our own walk. You either have the gift and it'll mature and you'll eventually realize it, or you will have the gift. I'm convinced of that. In my own faith, in my own relationship with God, I don't like anyone's excluded, but that didn't help Carl much. It helped me a lot. It got me off. You got him off my back. You folks have a schedule, so I'm willing to stay until they open the bar. Please, there was one over here, and then we'll catch up. Please.
Father Coyne, when you look through a telescope, are you really looking back in time, or are you simply magnifying light that is just?
You are examining the light that has just reached us, but that light originated some, light years ago. So the object you're looking at emitted that light to you a billion years ago. So you're seeing an object as it was then. By the way, we don't look through telescopes. It sounds romantic, not so romantic, but I do once in a while just to know that I can still see. We look at a TV monitor. And then there was one back here. Was there? Not any of you Jesuits. You'll have your chance. Please, there was one. Yes, please.
I just have a comment. My name is Leila Audi, and I'm a molecular biologist, and I'm very interested in this continuous debate between religion and science, and I think this is one of the most inspiring presentations I've ever heard.
Okay.
So thank you.
Oh, I want to make sure the front row heard that. I'm asked for a raise. The last time I asked in the Vatican, when I worked for the Vatican, I asked for a raise. Oh, of course. I said 50%. What are you making now? 50% with zero. Well, thank you for listening.
Father, thank you. One question, Father Coyne. Would it be okay if I sat in on any of your classes? Would you mind? Be okay? Homework? Good answer. I now invite all of you to join us in the atrium for the ribbon cutting. Thank you very much.